Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and we are on your screens every Monday to Friday between the hours of 6 and 8. Now, as we discussed a little bit in the introduction, there have been a lot of mixed reactions to, the promulgation of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, or rather, as you might know it as the BELA Bill. Now, the new law is set to replace South Africa's Schools Act of 1996, as well as the Employment of Educators Act of 1998. Now, the BELA Bill aims to strengthen governance within South Africa's education sector, as well as tighten some rules and requirements for homeschooling as well. It also criminalizes parents with children who are not being enrolled at school. We are joined this evening by Basil Manuel, who is the Executive Director of the Teachers Union of South Africa, and he joins us now for his reflections on the new education law. Good evening and welcome to INX Prime.
Good evening and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Basil, for joining us once again. I think a lot of our viewers at home are looking forward to this conversation just to unpack some of, the things they might be hearing on social media, some of the overreactions that people have also been spreading on social media platforms regarding the bill. Now, the bill has been 11 years in the making, and that's something a lot of people don't know. But what are your initial reflections on this milestone?
At first, let me say that as NAPTOSA, we had reached a point where, when the bill had gone through the House of Assembly, that we said we are able to work with the bill as it stands, because we have seen many, many changes, many positive changes come about, and we believe that what we then had and what we have now is something we can work with. Is it completely satisfying every single thing we wanted? No, and the answer is no. And I don't think anybody's ever 100% satisfied. But when you look at where we were almost 11 years ago to where we are at now, we are in a very, very different space. We've commented, we've attended public hearings, we've submitted comment, and all that has had a positive impact. That there are people that have some scare stories about the bill. That unfortunately cannot be helped. And we know that some people think that the parts of the bill are aimed at attacking Afrikaans. There is no mention of a language. And that Afrikaans deserves protection as much as every other language. It can't have a space. But neither is it denied its own space. Mother tongue instruction is being catered for within the bill, and it becomes a really contentious matter. I need to cough. Pardon me. And then, of course, in the run-up to the bill reaching its conclusion in the National Assembly, there were all sorts of talks. One even said that the rights of parents are shifted completely, and that the parental rights are being removed, and the teacher.
Apologies, Basil. We seem to have lost connection. Viewers at home, that was Basil Manuel. We were discussing all things regarding the BELA bill. And as Basil was talking about, as it stands, not everyone is going to be happy with the bill as it is. But as he was saying, it is potentially workable, and it is something people can potentially work with. And I know that some of the concerns that were being shared on social media platforms was that Afrikaans or other native languages will also not be incorporated, but we will delve into that a bit more. Basil, do we have you back? Can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, perfectly clear. Please do go ahead.
So I was saying this, the language issue that really inflamed a lot of people. And the other one was the admissions policy. And of course, because the department holds fast that while schools and governing bodies can create an admission policy, and it is built into the bill, final say over the land and admissions lies with the department, the head of department rather, not just any old official in the department. Now, there's a lot of hype around this, but I don't know if people honestly believe that a school as an entity can make a decision and the rest must go to pot. It could never happen. We are a subset of a governmental structure. So there's got to be a final arbiter. And what we are saying to school governing bodies, we are saying to parent organizations, and we are saying to our own members who are principals, ensure that you stay between the lines of the law, because the law is your guide, the Constitution is your guide. If your admission policy is within the, the parameters of the Constitution, nobody can ask you to change it. Nobody's going to make you change. Then when it comes to the language, I've been at pains to say there is no school that has a language. The community has a language, and the language that becomes part of the school must be the language of the community. So if it is an Afrikaans community, of course, then the school will follow suit. But you can't have an Afrikaans school in the middle of a community that has changed completely. How does that work? So I think there's a lot of hype. I believe people must calm down. And I think with implementation, we are actually going to see that these were a lot of ghosts. But then, of course, there is the homeschooling issue. And our homeschoolers, look, primarily homeschoolers fall into two categories. There's the group that wants to teach their children a particular set because it comes with a religious background. We understand that, irrespective of the religion. Then there are those parents who simply believe that they would do a better job. Unfortunately, it's not always true. And they want carte blanche to decide what must be taught, how it must be taught, etc. And I often ask, which country in the world allows anybody to do that? It then makes nonsense of another part of the bill that says no child can be kept out of school. And if you keep a child out of school, you are liable to a fine or even imprisonment. So government or the Department of Education as a subset has to see that every single child in the country has been given their rightful opportunity to education. But, of course, as a former head of a school, I want to tell you, I've taken in children that were homeschooled, and it was a horrendous experience because they didn't do the things that is expected of a particular grade. Now, you can't teach hopscotch to your children for a whole year and expect them to enter university in the next year. They are part of a broader society. And I believe that we can find one another there. What is it that the bill wants? The bill wants homeschooling children registered. Is it unreasonable? But it can't be, because government has a responsibility to the child. What is in the best interest of the child? Secondly, the bill is saying, and now the Act, of course, is saying that we must ensure that after every particular key point in the life of a child's schooling, we must see that the child has actually reached their milestones. For example, at the end of grade 3, is the child ready to move to the intermediate phase? At the end of grade 6, at the end of grade 9, and at the end, and even with matric, because the children must go into probably the majority public universities. But it's about that integration. So this hype around interference, etc., one could never say that my rights are absolute to the exclusion of everybody else's rights. And so it is around these things that there has been a lot of hype. But I believe that even within that, I think the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has been extremely generous, even after signing the bill, indicating that 2 clauses, 4 and 5, are held abeyance in terms of implementation until, or for a period of 3 months, until there's been time to discuss them further. Now, those 2 clauses, the clauses that relate to language and relate to admissions. And I think this is more than generous, because in my book, it's more hype than it is the reality. Let me pause there.
Yeah, now you also mentioned earlier in the start of the conversation regarding the religious aspect and how some parents may be halting their child's academic education to pursue religious academic education. So, for example, to talk about many of our Muslim viewers this evening, many Muslim viewers or many Muslim families will take their children or their sons or daughters out to school to attend Quran classes and things like that, and might have to take time off of school, maybe 1 or 2 years, to be able to complete these religious academic studies. How does the bill work when it comes to a situation like this? And does the bill make provisions for cases like this?
I don't think it necessarily does it over. It doesn't express it. It does every law express every little part. That is why with the law come a set of regulations. Grade R, for example, and so on. It can't be that everybody can assume that everything is written down. So, no, I'm not suggesting that. But I think that given South Africa's constitution and the level of respect that there is for religion and your right to practice your religion, I think that accommodation can be found. One of the most beautiful things about our country is how tolerant we are with one another in terms of religion. I think that we are a very, very different set of people. And I would like to believe that, given that, there will be a far greater tolerance for religious expression, etc. Knowing, of course, that we've always had schools that have had a religious slant. Those have been primarily your independent schools. And in government schools, I taught in a high school in Pietermaritzburg, where we always allowed the youngsters to go to mosque on a Friday, and they returned. And nobody batted an eyelid. And we changed the timetable to suit that. And in a school where I think about 98% of the children weren't Muslim, but for the 2%, it was easy to do it because we are tolerant, and we must be tolerant, and we must respect that certain religions demand certain things.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I know that was a burning question that a lot of people had. And because, like you said, there was so much of hype and conversation going on social media, these things have a tendency to spill over into conversations that happen in social settings. And they kind of have a tendency to, override our sense of what we understand the bill to be, and we start forming these ideas of hysteria, like you were mentioning, the hype and the chaos and the controversy that comes with the signing of a new bill. But thank you for clarifying that as well. Now, what I also want to ask you about is, finally, are you at all concerned that the political head of the department, the minister, actually was boycotting the signing of this bill?
I think it was extremely unfortunate, because just a day before, the minister at a lechotla of the very department was very clear that once the bill is signed, as a professional in charge of the department, she has to see to its implementation, because they work in her particular party. They believe they must follow the rule of the law. And I thought that was wonderful. I didn't expect it to turn into a boycott, because I think it was an opportunity lost. Even there, she could still have registered her objection. But as I've said to her and many other people, that I don't care where a minister comes from. The minister is in a particular position. We've got to make that position work in the best interest of where we are located. And I think our particular minister has a good head on her shoulders, and I think that she has her heart in the right place, and I certainly believe that this is a speed bump that we will get over. And I want to see that that certainly does happen. And so, insofar as NAPTOSA is concerned, we continue to work with the minister, not because she's from a particular party or not, but because she is the minister, and we want to see her succeed in the department, because it's in the best interests of ourselves and more especially our children.
Basil, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was interesting to be able to hear and listen in from you and listen in on, from the perspective of NAPTOSA, but also as an educator, somebody who has, been in the field and has experience in the field, to almost highlight the positives of the BELA Bill and how it is aiming to protect children in South Africa. And like you said, act in their best interest and to make sure that they all have the right to an education and they all have the right to be enrolled in schools as well. So it was a very interesting conversation from your perspective because, like you said, the hysteria and the chaos that was created on social media platforms, it's very hard to kind of siphon through that and to be able to understand that there is a lot of positives that do come with the implementation of now the act that will protect children and ensure that the law is acting in their best interests, even if their parents are not. So thank you so much for joining us this evening and for resting our minds in regarding the signing of the BELA Act. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much and have a good night further.
Viewers at home, that was Basil Manuel, who is from NAPTOSA. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have bore witness to a lot of the hysteria and a lot of the concerns that people have placed forward when it comes to the BELA Act that has just been signed by President Ramaphosa. Now, it was interesting to listen in on Basil, yes, as an educator and as somebody who is part of and has experience in the field of education. It was interesting to learn a more positive view or review on the bill and how it actually aims to protect children and act in their best interest and protect them under the law to ensure that they are cared for and that their access to education is met. But let us know your thoughts on our social media platforms. Are you still concerned when it comes to the BELA Bill, or do you have a slightly different perspective now after this conversation? Do let us know on all our social media platforms. But like Basil said, not everything is foolproof and not everything is in writing, and it's not going to appease everyone just as yet, but definitely an interesting one. So do let us know your thoughts on our social media platforms. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break and we'll come right back.